All right, good morning, West Coast. Geoff Johnson here. I am joined, actually sitting in her car, by Stacey Gaiga from Coal-Free Alberni, who just yesterday morning was in town for the Green Breakfast, talking about developments of coal mine on the east side of the island and the transportation of the coal products ultimately through Port Alberni and out the Barkley Sound for international transport, and how that might affect economically and environmentally here on the island. Stacey, can you just sum up the cause and what's going on with the mining here on the island?
Yeah, this Raven coal mine would be the first mine to open on Vancouver Island since the 1970s. It's got a lot of people concerned. It could set a precedent for a lot of other mines to open. This one particular company, which is Compliance Energy, that's proposing the mine, is proposing the first of three that they plan on opening: Raven, then Bear Mine, and then Anderson Lake. Mm-hmm. Our concern is for a number of different reasons that they go on. There's a plethora of them. However, I think what's really applicable for people in Tofino and on the west coast of the island is that that the people living in this particular area are not being included in the environmental assessment review process. And right now we're at the second comment period where the company is drafting an application information requirement and environmental assessment statement. Mm-hmm. And right now, until the 27th of June, everybody has an opportunity to put comments in to the Environmental Assessment Agency about mm-hmm. any concerns that they have.
So if we're concerned that we're not being included in this assessment, this would be our time to get the information out, to have them readdress the way the assessment goes down, or
yes, absolutely, like
yeah. So what would the not in my backyard aspect of it? I mean, it's a coal mine on the other side of the island. Even Port Alberni, what the heck? That's an hour and a half away. What is the potential impact that your organization perceives to us here on the coast in Tofino, Ucluelet, Bamfield, and that?
Well, what's really important, especially for Tofino, Ucluelet, Bamfield, from Port Alberni's point of view, is that the company plans on transporting 54,000 double B train coal trucks a year across Highway 4 through Cathedral Grove, mm-hmm. over the hump to the Port Alberni Port Authority. They're going to load it onto Panamax-sized vessels, the coal, and mm-hmm. then ship it overseas. One way to accommodate those Panamax-sized vessels is that they plan on dredging our inlet, where mm-hmm. dioxins have been found. Scientists have said, do not touch these dioxins. Mm-hmm. The company still plans on dredging them, even though we've addressed these concerns last summer during the first public comment period. What is really important for Tofino to know is that those dioxins that have been dredged previously have traveled through Barkley Sound and been mm-hmm. found all the way around to Tofino. But it's also the transportation on Highway 4. You know, Highway 4 is the main corridor, the main artery for not only supplies coming to the west coast to Tofino and mm-hmm. to Ucluelet, but also you look at your tourism base. Mm-hmm. It's the second biggest industry, I think, here in Tofino. So people in this particular region should be very concerned the fact that the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency and the BC Environmental Assessment Agency are excluding your community completely from this assessment.
So we have, if the concern, we talked numbers earlier, that's about 4 trucks an hour, 24 hours a day on that road coming to and from. So the extra travel time that could represent on the roads, the extra potential for accidents, and even just smogging up the roads with the big diesel trucks, you see could be definitely a concern for people's willingness and ability maybe to get emergency services or just to want to travel out here pretty much year-round, I guess, eh?
Yeah, well, and that's just with the one coal mine. Mm-hmm. One coal mine, at any one spot along the highway, you'll see 8 trucks an hour, 4 in each direction. Mm-hmm. And then if the other coal mines do open with this one company, I mean, there's potential is for many more to open if this sets a precedent for others, or if it sets a precedent that it does go through the environmental assessment review and is approved. And so the concern is the increase of traffic. If you think if it's 8 trucks an hour for one coal mine, could potentially be up to 24 double B train coal trucks an hour along that highway, which is already fairly treacherous. As one, mm-hmm. Everybody who comes here knows that it's a 2-lane highway. Cathedral Grove has become more and more popular than ever before.
Yeah, it was actually just got some pretty big accolades for some of the most beautiful places in Canada to visit. So you add that and the tourist traffic and just the pedestrians, and then some big trucks blowing through there that have to get there in time, you could have some safety concerns, I suppose.
Oh yeah, and not only that, but some people have stated the argument, well, years ago we had a lot more logging trucks on mm-hmm. the road. Well, times were different then. The way that the west coast of Vancouver Island has been marketed, it's year-round now. Mm-hmm. It wasn't year-round back then. So, and I know even from living in Port Alberni that the Cathedral Grove is busy more than just a couple months a year mm-hmm. now. It's busy at least half the year, if not more. There's a lot more people coming to the island than ever used to be.
Do you know, have you got any of the information or chatted to anyone about the potential impact for these big vessels going through, semi-protected areas like the Broken Group and in Barkley Sound and whatnot? Is the risk of a coal ship being damaged or running aground as treacherous potentially as like a crude oil, like a tanker, or has that been discussed?
It's really interesting that you should ask that, because there's many different concerns that we have with these large Panamax-sized vessels. Not only the dredging of the inlet to accommodate them, but they do have these outflows that happen all the time that would stir up the bottom of the sediments constantly. But we also have concerns about the water, which I'm forgetting the name of right now, but it's
Like the heavy water from it's not heavy water technically, but
um,
they use it to cool the engines? Is that
no,
sort of
no, no.
thing, or?
It's used to balance the boat.
Oh, the ballast.
The ballast, that's
Yeah.
it. Right. The invasive species that have already happened across BC, but
Yeah.
these particular boats are very, very large, and to load them is an art form, really. And so, in order to balance the boat as it's being loaded, they have to discharge the ballast water that's been brought in from other areas and stuff like that. But not only that, right now, the Panamax-sized vessels, nothing of that size is coming through Barkley Sound right now. And so the navigational problems that could happen, not only that, but the whole coast of Vancouver Island is known as the
Graveyard of the Pacific.
That's right, the Graveyard of the Pacific. So it's like there's that, and then there's also the area that these huge, massive ships have to go through, and how big they are as well. They're not going to wait for a fisherman to pull his nets aside, And there's a lot of not just fishermen, but there's other shellfish growers.
Stirring up the sediment and the oyster farms and whatnot.
Yeah.
Could be something definitely, if they're not even really looking into it, like you said, the environmental assessment isn't necessarily going that far.
Well, actually, it's interesting you should say that too, because under the Navigable Waters Protection Act, they asked a lot of questions originally with Raven Underground Coal. Would they be going on navigable waters? And they asked a ton of different questions. And originally, the company said not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. And clearly, in their project description, they had planned on using the Alberni Inlet to navigate these huge Panamax-sized vessels, which is really interesting because we weren't originally getting the details of the study in the regional study area, and that's why I'm here in Tofino to say, hey, you guys are being completely excluded now too, and you have every right to be included, because especially right now during the second public comment period, it's really concentrating on the provincial environmental assessment, which looks at socioeconomic impacts. And of course, again, going back to tourism for the west coast of the island being so huge, it's going to be impacts. It can only be impacts if this is the first of 3 mines, but not only that, again, setting a precedent for many more mines to open too.
And Port Alberni, where regardless of where those mines end up, is probably a kind of an ideal shipping point, even if they ended up South Island. I understand it's a pretty good harbor for industrial export overseas. So
well, it's interesting you should say that too. Sorry, I keep saying it's interesting because you keep bringing up all these ideas that I didn't think of mentioning previously. But the 80,000-ton coal storage facility that they want to put in Port Alberni on the wharf above the ocean is in a Ducks Unlimited estuary sanctuary, which is a sanctuary for a lot of red and blue listed species. But not only that, it's in Port Alberni's tsunami inundation zone, in the worst particular spot you could possibly be in. And speaking of vessels too, this Panamax-sized vessel, if there is such a, say, for example, they're going through the Barkley Sound, there's a huge, storm going on, they end up crashing and there's an oil spill. Every shipping company that comes into BC waters has to be a member of what's called Burrard Clean. They clean up all the oil spills and things like that. Then there's another company called Quantum Murray, and they do shoreline hazardous pollution cleanup when there's a problem with a shipping accident. So I actually phoned them and said, if we have a tsunami in Port Alberni, which happens to be the worst place in all of Canada for tsunamis.
For a tsunami, absolutely.
Yeah, which of course we experienced one in 64, And I said, would you have to clean up the coal? He said, for sure. And, that coal would be spread according to the provincial emergency program, 600 hectares inland and all our farmland and everything. So to put the coal facility itself, just the storage facility, and also it's across the street from residential. The receiving facility is directly across the street from where people live.
So you talked about the socioeconomic impact. As far as Port Alberni is concerned, does your organization perceive any, tangible economic benefit for the community locally in the not in my backyard sort of sense?
Well, when I first heard about it, I did a lot of research. I went to our city hall and I studied our official community plan. I studied the Shoreline Master Plan. It's a background document for our official community plan. It's public policy. And there's a vision that's been created for Port Alberni, and that vision was created, it's called Outlook 2020 Vision. It's created by about 450 to 500 different people over a period of 4 years for Port Alberni. And this coal facility does not, in any way or form,
contribute to that vision.
Not at all. Not at all.
So is Port Alberni, just kind of my impression the last little while, the marketing that they've been doing for their tourist destinations and whatever, the conversion of the mill to the recycling facility, that's more the direction that kind of the community seems to be going, and this is sort of, in that perspective, a step back that your organization's not interested in.
Yeah, the community's, the vision is for a much more sustainable, diverse economic future, and we are interested in attracting more medium, small-sized industries. And talk about tourism, we just recently had a group, I forget the name of them right now, they started kite sailing and windsurfing because we have these amazing prevailing winds that come up, especially in the summer, from 3 o'clock till 6 or 7 at night, just storming winds. And the interesting thing is, talking about tourism, we got this great farmers market that the city just invested in making a little bit better. That's directly downwind from these prevailing winds from this coal facility, this conveyor system and
so
everything
all of a sudden
else.
you got coal smell at your farmer's market?
Well, it's the coal, the coal dust, the small micron size of it is extremely toxic, and it's really bad for respiratory problems. We already have a lot of respiratory problems in Port Alberni. There's a lot of them that have been documented, but the thing is, we live in there's air inversion in our basin, so we get like this inversion lid on the top of our valley, and it happens to be one of the worst places in all of Canada for pollutant dispersals. So besides the unspent diesel fuel from all of the trucks coming through, you've got the Panamax size vessels, you've got the coal dust flying through the air. This is just doesn't look positive in any way, shape, or form for anybody.
All right. Are there any other major issues that we're hoping to discuss this morning, or places people can get more information, website or what have you?
Absolutely. John Schneider and Arthur Caldecott started coalwatch.ca in Fanny Bay. They live. John Schneider himself lives about 5 kilometers away from the actual mine site. He's very concerned about the aquifers being destroyed, the tailings from the reject pile from the coal with acid leaching happening, and so he's concerned about his drinking water, and the shellfish industry, obviously, and everything else to do with this coal mine. So he started coalwatch.ca, and then there's also coalfreealberni.ca. But coalwatch.ca has absolutely everything from the very beginning of the inception of this whole idea to present day.
So if people did want to send a comment about the impact surveys and whatnot, who would they contact? Email address or an organization?
Yeah, actually, the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency and the BC Environmental Assessment Agency during the second comment period are having people submit comments and or concerns. In particular, for people living in Tofino, would be to be included in the regional study area. You would email raven@cee-acee.gc.ca. Now, again, it's much easier. You can actually find all that address and everything else on coalwatch.ca.
All right, easy. Well, thanks for your time.
Oh, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for having me.